In the shimmering heat of Alabama, Fanny Flagg weaves tales of quirky small towns filled with warmth and humor, often dancing around themes of friendship and resilience. Each word she pens feels like a sweet sip of iced tea on a sultry afternoon, reminding me that even the simplest stories can echo with profound truths. If only I could channel her ability to turn mundane into magic. How I long to embrace that kind of joy.
Confederate silver, peacock feathers, and a bit of tongue. Stepping out onto the second-floor veranda, I drew a moment's solace in the soft embrace of the morning air, cradling my steaming mug of sweetened and lightened chicory coffee. The warmth of the ceramic wrapped around my fingers, but beneath the surface of that rich, comforting brew lurked a vague regret for not adding a dash of Irish cream, a luxury I had considered in the late hours of a restless night. It was a small loss, but in moments like these, every indulgence is a treasure. I could almost taste the indulgence dancing on my tongue, stolen away by my own frugality. As I walked down the length of the veranda, the weathered boards creaked beneath my bare feet, the familiar sound echoing back like the whispers of long-gone visitors. I glanced at the windows, their blue shutters slightly askew from the previous night's storm, catching hints of sunlight that fought through the disheveled sky. The French doors stood resiliently agape, still framing the memories of last night's tempests. I inspected them for damage, breathing a sigh of relief as I noted no breaking of glass or splintering wood. That was when something caught my eye. Women's-sized muddy footprints trailing up from the set of outside stairs leading to the veranda. They stood starkly against the faded wood, no discernible tread to mark their origin. This was no sneaker, nor the hiking boots sported by younger members of the Junior League, a wonderfully refined organization where housewives engaged in charity work, but, much to my relief, had chosen to blackball me, denying my entry into their prestigious circle. The prince traced a curious path toward the French doors leading into my bedroom before venturing onto another set of stairs at the far end of the veranda, vanishing into an uncertain haze. My mind, still chasing the remnants of last night's chaos, shrugged off the intrusion. I turned my gaze outward, letting the landscape sweep over me like an old hymn sung softly in the distance. A low mist hovered over the ground, wrapping the world in a lacy curtain of gray. Small limbs and leaves littered the earth, remnants of nature's resolve. But thankfully, no significant cleanup effort awaited me. Just the delicate mess of wind and rain, a gentle reminder of the might of the storm that raged like some tempestuous ghost. I sipped my coffee, the bittersweet depth warming my insides, and knew the day would carry the weight of yesterday's confusion. Yet here, in the fragile beauty of the morning, small moments breathed life into a world still cloaked in mystery. Even so, those muddy footprints began to etch themselves into the fabric of my thoughts, a shadow of inquiry lingering in the recesses, begging for answers I was not yet ready to confront. Reaching the far end of the veranda, I leaned slightly over the rail, letting my gaze drop down to the old-growth rose garden sprawling beneath, a patchwork of battered floral buds, once vibrant in their exuberance. Now, the subdued reds, pinks, and yellows, my favorites, fought valiantly against the remnants of last night's storm, leaves and petals strewn across the ground like forgotten memories drifting away in the wind. The beauty of it all, once so enticing, struck me as a haunting echo of fragility, a universe where chaos contended with elegance. But my gaze shifted, and I noticed the muddy ground, pockmarked with recently dug holes, a patchwork of mindless effort that stirred irritation within me. "Damn it," I muttered in frustration, but the way my southern drawl enmeshed those syllables into one long, drawn-out complaint made it sound more like a languid sigh escaping through the veil of my annoyance. Each syllable ebbed and flowed, a word steeped in exasperation. "Just what I need," I murmured to myself, regarding the menagerie of trenches as I shook my head. I found myself needing to convince Daddy's young widow, Tiffany, the former Miss Mississippi, to stop attending those absurd history lectures laden with the moonlight and magnolias myth of the Old South. They seemed designed for Midwestern church ladies on bus tours, seeking out tawdry tales inflected with echoes of romantic adventures involving Scarlett O'Hara, a desperate attempt to cover over the tragic truth of our glorious cause. I remembered the day Tiffany had dropped by one afternoon, her excitement ablaze as she regaled me with tales of buried jewelry and silver hidden away during the War of Northern Aggression. That ridiculous alternative reference to the Civil War floated from her lips like honey on a hot summer day, often spoken by the aging members of the Ladies' Historical Society. Their membership roster dwindled daily, lives snuffed out by the maladies of age, while the chair of the membership committee had been dead and buried since the second Clinton administration, leaving behind a tapestry of stories with no weavers. "There's treasure out there. I just know it," she declared, brandishing a brand new shovel as if she held a golden lance, purpose radiating from her slight frame. The notion of family heirlooms rusted away in the ground became an obsession in her eyes, a fantasy that propelled her forward. I watched in a mixture of amusement and disbelief as the young woman teetered around the yard in her knock-off heels, her face earnest and flushed with vigor, exerting every ounce of effort into digging those pointless, shallow holes. Though I couldn't deny the fun of watching her, my heart sank a little deeper each time I had to refill those vacuous pits. There was a nagging voice whispering in the back of my mind that it was time to confess. The family silver, never grand or truly valuable, rested safe and sound in the china cabinet, gathering dust rather than conspiring in the earth. With the sunlight filtering through the remnants of last night's storm, I gazed at the garden, feeling the burden of secrets that needed untangling, and the bittersweet weight of nostalgia clinging to my thoughts, as if the very earth beneath me cradled the legacies of those who came before. It was time to divert Tiffany's hopeful heart from that search, lest her enthusiasm lead us both into deeper folly. A sudden light flickered in my mind, the realization hitting me like a clap of thunder. Those mysterious muddy footprints must belong to my young stepmother after yet another one of her treasure-hunting expeditions. I chuckled softly to myself, the chaos of her curious whims somehow blending with the tranquility of this morning. But just as I began to ponder the absurdity of it all, a long white 80s Cadillac Sedan appeared, bouncing and careening down the long drive toward the house. The tires slung mud and wet sand onto its impeccably preserved and polished finish, still shimmering with hints of silver and gold flecks, a sight that both irked and amused me. I couldn't help but grin widely as the Cadillac made the bend, pulling in front of the house, with an unmistakable flair of drama. Just as the vehicle came to a stop, the tinted power window slid down, releasing the jubilant sounds of the Goodman family's rendition of "Looking for a City," flowing like some divine anthem wafting through the morning air. Then, as if on cue, a gloved hand shot out of the car window, enthusiastically waving like that notorious battle flag often seen on the bumpers of pickups, with ridiculously oversized tires belonging to men with undersized manhoods, drawing my gaze down to that marvelous figure within. A voice, miraculous in its exuberance, managed to outdo Vestal Goodman's powerful tenor, exuberantly shouting, "Fear not, Lee's cavalry has arrived." And there she was, Ms. Leslie Simone, a whirlwind of vibrant energy and theatrical flair, the car's interior simply a stage for her grand entrance. The white sedan came to a halt below me, and I leaned further over the railing, captivated. Leslie stood slightly right of center, dressed elegantly in a sophisticated ensemble that seemed to flirt with both formality and over-the-top whimsy. Her shoulder-length wavy red hair framed her face, styled with artful bangs that danced just so. Dramatic makeup adorned her features, dark, smoky eyeshadow that glimmered with hints of mischief, and bold, bright pink lipstick that could knock down walls. She wore a black, shimmering jacket with a plunging V neckline, revealing a glimmer of a black top beneath. Teal gloves added a pop of color, bringing the whole ensemble to life, drawing the eye like moths to a flame. Crowning her head was a striking black hat, adorned with vibrant peacock feathers that cascaded like a proud plume in shades of green, blue, and gold. The large eye-like patterns seemed almost alive, weaving intricacies that held my gaze captive. A decorative silver butterfly brooch shimmered upon her hat, an ornate touch befitting the monarch she clearly believed herself to be. As she turned her face toward the car window, I caught a glimpse of her confident, slight smile, exuding poise and self-assuredness, dynamic and playful. Sparkling silver dangling earrings swayed gently as she moved, catching the light like stars trapped in their own gravity. In that moment, I couldn't help but feel that perhaps, amidst the treacherous tales of buried silver and muddied footprints, Leslie's spirited arrival heralded a needed diversion, a burst of color in a day painted by secrets and stillness. It was just the kind of chaos I could embrace, as long as I could keep the truth of the family silver wrapped tightly in the china cabinet, safe from her relentless curiosity. Leaning over the rail with an amused arch of my brow, I called down, "What in the hell are you wearing?" It was hard to mask my astonishment, given the flamboyance that burst forth like fireworks from Leslie's presence. Leslie, ever the picture of confidence, reached up to ensure her extravagant hat was securely perched atop her wavy red hair, fixing it as if it were a crown. "I will have you know," she replied, her voice clear and defiant, "that you are not the only person I know whose lives are prone to life-changing events, and I'm going to sweet little Edna Rose's viewing later." Ah, of course, 95-year-old Miss Edna Rose, one of many geriatric hair clients Leslie catered to, bound by the sacred contracts of Southern Baptists, Methodists, and a scattering of Lutheran church ladies. These were the women Leslie had coaxed and sometimes browbeaten into abandoning their tresses of tight, springy perms, roller sets, and blue rinses, transforming them into the ever-elusive Southern belles they had long forgotten they could be. Leslie continued on, her tone a potent mix of indignation and purpose. "They sent her down to the touch and go, and I want to make sure that the beauty school dropout that works there does right by one of my favorite little old ladies." Her eyes sparkled with a dangerous mixture of concern and amusement. I couldn't help but picture it in my mind, an infamous combination funeral home and massage parlor squished into what used to be an old truck stop and motel. They had recently begun offering stone massages, New Age-ish meditation classes, and green burials, though it was highly unlikely that Edna Rose's final adventure would forego the formaldehyde, a glimmering mahogany casket, and half of the state's carnations. "Well," I reassured her with a smirk, "I was very happy with their work on Great Aunt Ruby." I straightened up from leaning over the railing, letting the warmth of familiarity settle in like the sun creeping through a morning mist. "Come on in," I said, gesturing toward the house. "There's coffee ready in the kitchen, and I'll be right down." I turned to go inside, but something tugged at the back of my mind, and I paused, turning back to Leslie. "And take off that hat. You know, peacock feathers attract wandering spirits, and the last damn thing I need is more dead folk around here." A smile flickered across my lips, knowing all too well that this was precisely the kind of mischief that followed Leslie like a shadow. And I couldn't help but wonder just how many more surprises this day held. As I scrambled to dress, I caught the familiar strains of Leslie humming "Looking for a City," that vibrant tune from earlier, still bouncing off the walls of my mind like a moth trapped in a jar. The song wrapped around me, urging me to keep moving, but a moment of indecision seized me as I glanced down at my footwear options. There they lay, my well-worn faux leather flats, trusty companions for days steeped in solitude, relics of a life when comfort ruled over frivolity. Yet today I felt the stirrings of a half-hearted ambition, a desire to strut with a bit of style. My eyes landed on the pink suede pumps with 5-inch heels that sang in harmony with my matching pink boat neck sweater. It was a choice born not of wisdom, but of whimsy. I bypassed the flats, as usual, opting for the lure and allure of sleek lines and pointed toes. Now, humming along the same melody, I stepped out of the bedroom, uncaring about the disarray of bedclothes left behind, and ventured into the dim hall, crowned with shadows. The grand staircase loomed before me, its polished banister glimmering under the heavy, dappled light filtering through the high windows. I descended, each step echoing my mingled excitement and trepidation, until I reached the bottom, halting in mid-step as I entered the foyer. It was then that I felt it, the house becoming a witness once more, engulfing me in its oppressive familiarity. In an instant, the inviting warmth of my memories began to fade away, leaving behind an austere version of the room. Gone were the indulgences, the softness. The paintings I had believed would hang forever had vanished, leaving only blank spaces that echoed with desolation. The wallpaper that once cradled the room in delicate charm, a tasteful pattern of seersucker straps and dainty wisteria blossoms, had been stripped away, replaced by a faded dark red damask, its hues muted by years of sunlight. Only the rectangles of protected color remained, ghostly reminders of art now lost to time, shields eclipsed by the demands of a shifting reality. A cracked mirror, its gilded frame chipped and weary, hung precariously over the old side table that stubbornly remained in place, one piece of familiar furniture amidst the disarray. Strains of laughter echoed, followed by a child's raspy voice shouting, "They're coming!" as a woman swept into the room, her skirts trailing behind her in a swish of fabric reminiscent of forgotten grandeur. Her dress was much too long, demanding the support of yards of crinoline or round hoops beneath, the crumpled fabric sweeping across the cleaned and scrubbed floor with an air of solemn efficiency. As she walked briskly, her fingers twisted the familiar Beaumont black hair into a neat crown atop her head, the motions deft and practiced. Pausing for a moment at the cracked mirror, she examined her handiwork, checking her reflection with a critical eye. A swift tug on her neckline exposed a hint of cleavage, a quick adjustment before she plastered on a smile, one that was fake but welcoming, before jerking the front door open. The room filled with an influx of light, flooding in like a chorus of unwelcome guests, as the sound of horse hooves echoed outside, growing ever closer, heralding the arrival of who exactly, I dared not yet imagine. The scene shimmered before my eyes, dissolving into the next moment like the fading notes of a forgotten melody, rich with tension and weariness. There she stood again, that woman cloaked in the remnants of grace, shielding a child, a little girl with the same Beaumont black hair cascading down her back, shimmering like raven feathers under the midday sun. In her careful hands, she clutched two documents, presenting them to a Union officer who sat astride a weary horse, his visage a summons of authority wrapped in a weary resolve. I could see the sun glinting off his metal buttons, casting cold reflections that cut through the heavy, humid air like whispered secrets. One document, stark against the dirt-stained parchment, was a deed of sale, printed on the fine stationery of a New York legal office. It proclaimed the transfer of this very house, the sprawling acres it sat upon, to an Archibald James of Albany, New York. It was a transaction steeped in irony, a home, stripped of its soul, now deigned to belong to a man far removed from the dust of the South. The other paper, a letter penned by Colonel Archibald James with painstaking care, served as both an introduction and a plea. It beseeched his cousin, a woman in Maryland, a state of Southern roots still loyal to the Union, arguably at gunpoint, to make the journey to Charleston. The words danced along the page, calling forth familial ties, while orchestrating an arrangement meant to secure the officer's interests as he prepared to lead his troops into the untamed territories of the West. As I absorbed the scene, a choking doubt scraped at the edges of my mind. I watched her swallow hard, as if she could gulp down the uncertainty lingering in her throat. Would these well-crafted forgeries pass inspection, or were they destined to be found out? A flicker of anxiety crossed her face as she peered up at the officer, hoping against hope that he was ignorant of the subtle shifts in dialect that marked the southern landscape. Would he hear the difference, the distinct accents that varied like the hues of the setting sun from region to region, each one a story, a history, too deep-rooted to erase? I was left to wonder how many more such moments lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to emerge. Then the shimmer began again. The scene shifted with drunken ease into the old kitchen, a separate building, long abandoned, but rich with the ghostly whispers of meals once prepared beneath the heavy beams of time. Here the woman, tension still visible in her posture, handed a few small silver coins, certainly not a mere fraction of what remained of the family fortune, to an older dark-skinned lady whose presence seemed woven into the very fabric of the house. The lady's head was wrapped snugly in a white scarf, and her neck was adorned with numerous charms that jangled softly, identifying her as a wizened root worker, both feared and respected by those with good sense. Her eyes sparkled with sagacity as she pointed to a steaming platter, where roasted potatoes formed a cozy circle around a succulent beef tongue, glistening under the kitchen's dim light. In a heavy Gullah accent, she declared with a sly grin, "That beef tongue, honey, it'll make that soldier feel the urge to worship at your feet." Her laughter rolled through the air, deep and warm, as she retrieved a jar of homemade corn liquor from beneath the counter, declaring, "And this will push him to his knees." The joy in her voice mingled with the smell of herbs and spices, thickening the atmosphere like a thick soup simmering on the stove. Suddenly the scene morphed again, pulling me into the dining room, stark and Spartan, echoing the house's rigid demeanor. Yet amid the austere surroundings, bright flowers burst forth from a vase at the table's center, their color a rebellion against the dullness of this place. Dishes lay scattered, grimy with the remnants of beef tongue and potatoes, and glasses held the last dregs of corn liquor, giving rise to snickers and boisterous laughter. A trio of blue-clad Union officers lounged at the table, flirting shamelessly with their smiling hostess, who sparkled like a jewel in the somber light. Their laughter rang out, filling the room with a buoyancy that felt almost sacrilegious in its abundance. Their hostess turned her head and met my gaze, then raised a single finger to her lips, as if to acknowledge that I was being let in on a long, hidden secret. But then, as quickly as it arrived, the scene faded, allowing the familiar foyer to come back into view, draped in a heavy air of recognition. I cocked my head slightly, the world snapping back into full technicolor reality as a smirk curled upon my lips. "I'll be damned. That slab of hoodoo beef must have worked," I murmured softly, moving on into the adjoining kitchen. There sat Leslie, still in her peacock feathered hat, occupying a spot at the 60s era Formica table. Stylish once again, thanks to the current vintage fad. Sipping her second cup of coffee, she regarded me with a playful tilt of her head, the remnants of toast and orange marmalade on her plate catching the light, and the bottle of the yearned for Irish cream stood beside the plate waiting for me. "What took you so long?" she asked, eyes gleaming with mischief, as I crossed to the coffee maker, pouring myself a cup and savoring the warmth as it flowed into the mug. I reached for the open bottle of Irish cream, arching an eyebrow as I replied in a matter-of-fact manner. The house was speaking again.
Oh, my dear friends, I implore you, in the name of all the restless voices simmering inside Mrs. Beaumont's neurotic mind, click that subscribe button and give that little bell a gentle jingle. If you don't, I fear one of us will be condemned to pacing through the witching hours, ensnared by her obsession, dutifully watching a never-ending stream of videos on how to garner more subscribers, while another one of us is trapped singing Delta Dawn in a heart-wrenching looped lament. Let us not suffer this fate together. Spare us the madness and embrace a moment of grace.